Hey everyone, I found this really cool tool called the question matrix or the Q matrix that I want to share with you because I think it could be a great help in developing your discussion questions as you create your online courses. So let's take a look. Here's what it looks like, and I have created an Excel worksheet of this, and we'll make that available I already have made it available to you, which I will share the link later on. Actually, I converted it to Google Sheets. So that's what you're going to find when you click the link, and you will be able to use this tool. So here's what it is, basically. You'll see across the top we have a row of words, and these words are verbs. We have the verb is, which refers to the present tense. Was, of course, that refers to the past tense. Can, which is a reference to possibility. Would or could talks about probability. Will is a prediction, and might takes us into that wonderful arena of imagination and creativity. These along the top row all refer to the complexity of the material. So the focus along the top is the material itself that you're questioning about. And along the left, you will see we have a column of pronouns. We have the pronoun what, which refers to events or an event. We have where, which talks about location. We have when, which talks about time, of course. Which leads to a question talking about choice, choosing between two or more options. Who is about people. Why is about the rationale behind something. And then how talks about the meaning or the process for doing something. So we take these different verbs and different pronouns and intersect them to create questions. Now remember that in my previous video, I talked about using 3 questions in one, 3 questions to create your discussion question. And the reason for that was, if you recall, to draw the student into the process of dialogue, into the question. So you start out with an easy question. Question will draw them in because it's easy. And then the second question will be a little more difficult, cause them to think a little more deeply. And then the third question will be even more challenging. And so the way you would use this, as you go from the top left corner of the grid to the bottom right corner of the grid, you're moving deeper in complexity and in depth of thought required of the student. So you start up here in the upper left-hand corner, and you're talking about questions that are basically closed questions and fairly easy to answer. It requires less depth of thought, simple memory. Usually the answers are right there before them. And then as you move further and further to the bottom and to the right, you get into more difficult questions that require more depth of thought. On the left-hand side, as I mentioned, that refers to depth of thought. The row on the top refers to the complexity of the content, so the focus is on content. The column to the left focuses on the student, how much is required of them. So let's just take and do an example here. Let's suppose I want to start out with a fairly easy question. So I choose where and was. Right now I'm creating a course on eschatology, which for those of you who may be watching this who don't know what that is, eschatology is the study of what the Bible teaches about final things and about life after death, angels and demons, and everything related to the non-material world. One of my lessons deals with the ascension of Christ, because the ascension of Christ forms the foundation for the belief in the second coming of Christ. And so in developing a discussion question for that week of studies, I might ask the question, where did the events recorded in the ascension narrative take place? So as you can see, that's a fairly non-complex, simple question because the information is right there in the text. So that's an easy one for the students to get into, what draws them into the question. So then I go a little deeper and a little more complex, and let's choose which and would. So we're talking about choice, and we're talking about probability. So I come up with this question. Which elements of this narrative do you think unchurched people today have the most problem accepting? So there they are asked to make a choice between the components of the narrative itself, and based on their own reasoning, come up with a reason why those elements would be difficult for people who are not familiar with the biblical text, familiar with Christian theology or Christian doctrine, might have trouble with in our culture today. Let's go a little deeper and a little more complex. I want to choose why and might, which, as you recall, talks about reason, rationale, and takes us into the realm of imagination. So here's the question I came up with. Why do you think it was necessary that the disciples of Jesus experience this event? So why is that more difficult, and why is it more complex? Because the text doesn't really explain this. So they're asked to look at not the meaning of the passage, not the details of the passage, but in general, why would God do this? God could have taken Jesus back to heaven in any way he wanted. Why did he cause him to fly up into a cloud and disappear before the disciples' eyes? Why was it a visual experience for them? Why was this necessary? What benefit would it have for the disciples? And so that forces them to think, to think deeply. And it's more of an open question too, because it really is open to the opinion of the student, because the text actually doesn't tell us why. So that's how you would come up with one discussion question that has 3 levels. It's a multi-level discussion question. So here's what it looks like when we put it all together. Where did the events recorded in the Ascension narrative take place? Which elements of this narrative do you think unchurched people today have the most problem accepting? And why do you think it was necessary that the disciples of Jesus experience this event? I think that's a pretty good discussion question. It's going to force the students to think and to interact with one another and to interact with the professor. So that's how you use this, and I hope you find it a helpful tool. Here's the link, mscconline.com/qmatrix. You can just click that or type that into your browser. It will take you right to the tool. So thanks for watching, and please provide some feedback. And if you get a chance, click like down below and subscribe to my channel. Thanks much, and God bless.